Hello, we are here today to discuss Press Corps and share some information about preparation and also the process during a conference and some of the parts that make it the same and some of the parts that make it different. It's a very special addition to MMUN, and it offers a really important experience today, especially to give students an understanding of how media interacts with politics and with decision-making and change-making in general on really important issues. I'll do just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Gabriel Forestieri. I'm the Director of Training. I've been with MMUN since 2006. So I'm coming up on 15 years now, and I really believe in this work, and it's been a profound way for me to be involved with youth. I took the Montessori adolescent orientation through NAMTA in 2015, and this is really how I focus my work with adolescents. And we also have a guest speaker here with us, Natalia Ureta. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Natalia Ureta. I'm a model UN teacher as well as a journalist. I've been involved with this for around 6 years, and it has become one of my passions.
It's wonderful to have Natalia here with us. She adds a lot of great wisdom and insight and professional experience. So she has been volunteering to assist us to make Press Corps even better. Press Corps is actually started by one of our former delegates who is now a senior bureau member named Christian Sulia. He can't be here today, but he is definitely responsible for Press Corps and has been the one to champion it and really give it the energy and credit that it deserves. It is an important and really relevant option for students to participate in our MUN conferences. Okay, so what is it? Basically, if you join the Press Corps, the students act as reporters, and they are representatives of international news agencies instead of countries, but and they prepare something called an editorial instead of a position paper. But in truth, that whole process is quite similar in that they must learn to have the same position and therefore study the viewership and articles of that news agency in order to represent the position or bias of that news agency, which begins already to demonstrate something important and fundamental about journalism and news in general, is how to read what is being written and where that opinion, even if it's not an opinion piece, where that story is coming from. And they then take those editorials, which are more like sample articles. They are write-ups that they will then use to create articles about the topics that are discussed at the conference through meetings and interviewing of the actual delegates at the conference in that committee working on that topic. They then create these articles which are shared through a blog and a live press briefing, and eventually the final editions will be available on the website. That's the nutshell version, and we're going to break it down a little bit. But maybe before we even get into that, we could just, Natalia, would you just maybe tell us a little bit about your first experience with Press Corps?
Okay, so last year was our first experience with Press Corps. We took two kids and basically did exactly this in a matter of, I don't know, 6th of October. We started getting prepared for this. Very interesting learning about first the country where the news outlet was based, and then following the guidelines and the procedure of how it all works, doing a lot of writing and asking a lot of questions. It was really nice to see how the kids learned how valuable all questions are. The process it has a lot of research, but it's so important for everyday life, that you gain a whole new idea of how to watch the news and how to talk to people.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Natalia. Okay, so the first thing that you have to understand when we begin talking about press corps is the news outlets, because that's going to be the agency from which the reporters are going to be working from. And they have to work to investigate the context of their news outlet, who the viewership are, what the specialties of that news organization might be, what's the global perception of that news organization, maybe some past major stories that have been award-winning or notable, and whether it's part of a coalition of news sources, like the Associated Press. And some examples of these news agencies we use are, as you can see, very global. We have the BBC, Canadian Press, Cape Times, Moscow Times, Palestinian News Network, Times of India, Xinhua news agencies. These are just some examples. There are others, of course. Al Jazeera is another. And you can see right away that the perspective of Al Jazeera and the perspective, we also have the Wall Street Journal, for example, is going to be quite different. And that's an important thing to uncover and discuss about news in general, and also specifically if you are a reporter of one of these agencies, what you might need to know. Maybe Natalia, you can speak a little bit about news agencies and.
Well, yeah, you have to understand when you learn about this that there are agencies that just tell the story with trying not to have any angle, just to feed the news outlets. But in order to get the whole idea, it's important to see where your country's at politically, economically, and all this, the background of your country, and then move on to the news, the media, and see where they stand, all the different aspects of what the country offers. And it's very important to know who you represent, but also to get to know who are the media competing with, who are your competitors. That way you understand even much better the position of the media that you are representing as press corps.
So that's really the beginning, is you pick a news agency for the school to represent. And each news agency has 2 reporters, as just as in the delegations from ambassadors have 2 delegates, although it is possible for one reporter to act on a news agency, but they then must prepare 2 different editorials, as they are responsible for 2 editorials. All news agencies are responsible for 2 editorials, 2 different topics. And in that process, you must research the news agencies, of course, understand what country they're from, where that news is circulated to, what they specialize in, if they have some history with the United Nations. And then from there, the students get to choose topics to research for their current committees. Each news agency must research 2 topics. Those 2 topics come from a topic 1 group and a topic 2 group. We'll get to that in a moment, but it's important that they choose one from each of the topic 1 and one from the topic 2, because they are synced with the conferences to ensure that delegates are discussing the topics that the news agencies are reporting on. So therefore, the topic 1 coincide with the first sessions of the conference, and the topic 2s will coincide with the second sessions on the second topics. It's just about finding a sync to make sure that those interviews and observations that the reporters will be doing are in line with the conference. And then after you research the topics, you work that together from the perspective of the news agency to create an editorial, which is basically a proposal for an article that you would write at the conference so that you're ready to discuss the details, but still from the perspective of that news agency. So just briefly about the similarities between representing a newspaper and a country are that everyone researches the topic. That's also the same as the delegates who are ambassadors do. 2 editorials must be submitted, it's the same. Again, it really shouldn't be that one reporter is responsible for one editorial and another reporter is responsible for the editorial. We strongly urge you to make sure that both of the reporters are involved with both editorials so that there isn't the sense that, oh, it's not my topic, I'm not going to be involved. It's very important that they are a team and they're working together. The students have to write the article from this position of the news agency. That's the same thing as the delegates. They are ambassadors of a country. It's exactly the same perspective. They are representing this news agency, not themselves. So it's not just about their own opinion on the subject. Reporters report on topics and write articles that reflect their specialty. So again, that's related again to this representation of the news agency, just in the same way the ambassadors represent a country. Before I get to the topics, maybe, Natalia, do you want to just talk a little bit about this process? You've done both processes?
I've done.
You prepared students to be ambassadors as well as journalists?
Yes, I have.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, the similarities?
Yes. There is the beginning of the process is very much the same. First, investigating about the country you're representing, for the delegate, the country itself, for the news outlet, okay, where does it stand politically, economically, and all this in order to, you don't know what the topics are, right? Just to have a full background of your country. And then we've moved to understanding the specific outlets, or if it was for the committee, the delegation, the committee. So for the delegation would be studying the committee, and for the journalists would be studying the outlet. Where does it stand? What do you do? How does it approach the news? And then the topic, based out of the background guides, also for the committee, you have to get insight of what's happening in the world. Kind of first the big picture, and then aiming it down to your side, your specific outlet or country. Where do you stand? The preparation is very much the same. A lot of understanding political and economical views, basically. A lot of research of the country and its competitors, its allies, and then the different outlets and how do they cover it.
Yeah, so I want to just move into the topics for 2021 that are for Press Corps. For day one, which of course, actually it's not just going to be one day, the online, it's going to be one sort of weekend one, and then weekend two. And these topics you can see for the first are going to be cybersecurity in DIASEC, election legitimacy in UNODC, and increasing access to information in ECOSOC. And then for the second topic, they can choose between women in development, substance abuse, and disaster risk reduction. So that means that every news agency must pick one topic from these first topics and one topic from these second topics. So just quickly, the BBC would write an editorial on a topic from day one and a topic from day two. News agencies cannot pick topics from the same day. They must choose one from day one and one from day two. So just to make it clear, that means that they have to pick cybersecurity and disaster risk reduction, or increasing access to information and substance abuse. It's up to the delegates. So this is one of the nice things about Press Corps is they really get to decide. They have a little more choice in topic. They're not just handed the topics they must participate in. There's a little sense that they can discuss what they're interested in. And some of that comes from some of their research into the news agency. It also is definitely related to just whatever topic they find exciting. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Natalia, how that worked for your students to have this choice in topics.
Yes, actually, it's interesting how they choose it. It's most of all is based in their interest and what they're excited to investigate about. The choice of it and the great questions usually comes because of the reporter's excitement and how deep they want to go and to cover it. So it's wonderful that they get to choose. And as a team, it's wonderful that one has the lead of one topic and the other one has more interested in the other, because it supports and it makes a stronger team when they're working together.
Okay, so here we have a little slide just to discuss more about preparation, which is sort of a timeline of how you might move through that. You have the beginning is you have your some information you're studying in your research about the United Nations, and you're researching about this specific news outlet, and you're researching topic A and topic B. You take all that research, which is usually start about 6 months before the conference. Of course, you don't start all of this at the same time. Each is a step in the process. And then, but you really need to understand all elements of this first box here in order for you to get into the development of editorials. And after you finish this editorial piece, then you begin to practice what it's going to be like, or hopefully you're practicing what it would actually be like at the conference, which includes also practicing interviewing and how you conduct interviews. Natalia has a lot to share about that, so I'm gonna let her discuss that briefly.
Okay, so the process is exactly this. You have to, in order to be able to be a reporter for the UN, you have to understand how the UN works. And I think that the beginning of the class is this, understanding committees and how the language used and how the whole process of this. That's a fundamental part in order also for the reporters to integrate within the committee. Then the developing of the topic is, of course, all the research part and all this. While you're researching this, it's very natural for the reporters to have a lot of questions. And this just moves you indirectly on how to ask these questions and who to ask these questions. So the interview aspect, how to interview to get the material for you to be able to write an article is the main component for the press corps. There's a lot of group activities that you could do with your students on day-to-day questions. We ask questions daily. I think it's like 300 questions that we get to ask daily to our parents, to our teachers, to our friends. And we don't realize the type of questions that are asked. So getting the reporters to think all these questions that they formulate can give you the material to write an article is it's a very interesting process. So I center the main part of the preparation in interviewing. So asking open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. How do you get your interviewer to answer the question you are asking, and specifically where you want to lead your article. So you have to be very well prepared on the topic, and you have to be very sure of confident that you know about it without engaging in any debate, because you're first of all a good listener. There's a lot of exercises that you could do as a group. Just like the delegates, they have to become great listeners, and getting to the point is it's one of the hardest things to do for kids usually. But the whole preparation process, it comes very natural once you've done the initial research of your topic, and then being able to understand the who, what, when, where, why questions, and having them answered by who you're interviewing gives you the material naturally just to center all and end it with your article.
Right. So a little bit about the editorials. They are very similar to the position papers in many ways, although they are more about creating article proposals, basically. But they do need to have a strong thesis statement that's kind of working towards what their perspective on this topic is from their news agencies. That can, of course, shift and change as they're interviewing and finding out the information, but it's probably going to stay fairly the same. It's unlikely that at the conference they're going to hear something that's going to vastly change the position. That's my experience. But it's important that they work as a team for this when they make these editorials, because they're also going to be working as a team when they write the articles in the conference. So the editorials, again, it's basically a culmination of this research process. They study the publication, the focus of the news organization, who the readership and viewership is. They do in-depth research on the topics, and then they culminate this with a thesis, which would provide the basis for an articles and prepares them for these article proposals, which is the editorials. We do have an example of this, and you can find it online to give you some sense of what you're looking for. It's definitely should be something that demonstrates the kind of research they've done and goes into details about background and past actions. And but instead of having necessarily solutions, it should have a perspective on what the thesis of the article would be about. I don't know, Natalia, you want to share some of your experience with editorials?
Yes, I think that working in group to write this editorial is a fundamental part of it. There's when you work in pairs, it keeps the balance of the neutralizing the topic, because as a reporter, what you want to do is to inform as neutral as possible, right? Depending on who you write for. So working in teams helps that to be established. The question, the last part of it, that you ended usually with a question that is the one that's going to be resolved in committee. It's the one that's going to give you the food for writing your editorial when you're over there. So it summarizes all the research you've done. In the whole process, you will have around 3 or 4 questions that, based on research, you start to solve to get into this big questions where you're going to aim your editorial. So it's going to prepare you to see where you're going to aim your research, your questions, and who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to interview? So I think that the way it ends for the first part of the editorial, the one that you submit while you're preparing, it's half of the work for the committee. It gives you that peace of mind. The reporters that are going to, they already know they have a starting point for the committee, for the report they're going to do in the committee,
Right.
and
Right.
a guide of who they're going to interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So there are some differences between being an ambassador and being a reporter. There isn't debate or negotiation really in like you have in a committee session, because they're not working on a draft resolution. But they are going to conduct interviews with the MMUN delegates, so there is still a lot of interaction, and there still is engagement, which requires confidence and requires that they are socializing with other members of the MMUN conference. But most of the time is really about writing. That's also a big difference. So, you do want to make sure the delegates enjoy writing if they're going to be involved with press corps, because there's going to be a lot of that. We also right now are asking for this 7th grade reading writing proficiency, as we are still doing it middle school only for press corps. That might change in the future, but for now we're keeping press corps as a middle school committee. Although we do have some thoughts about expanding it. Natalia is in favor of us expanding it to upper L as well. So we are working on how we might proceed with that. But for now, we are asking for at least a minimum 7th grade proficiency reading, writing, English. That doesn't mean they have to be native English speakers. It just means that they have to have enough of proficiency to read and write English. Also because our editorial staff, who are the bureau, are not necessarily all capable to edit in other languages. So we have to keep it in English for now. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to speak about the differences too?
Yes, I think that the main difference is the no debate part for the reporter, which is hard because as they investigate, they create a position and a standing on what could be a solution, and they have to be respectful for informing. So that for the reporter, for the delegate, totally the opposite. They have to speak out and say what the solution might be and actually work for that to gain that. So it's a different approach to the same problem. One has to inform and the other one has to find a solution. In order for you as a reporter to do that, it has a lot to do with self-control and asking the right questions. So one negotiates and the other one asks and reports, basically. So the reporter has to understand with clarity what their countries or cluster of countries stand for, in order for him or her to inform completely. So I think that the main difference is that one negotiates and the other one just informs.
So at the committee session, they'll do an introduction just like we do in all committees. There's a moment for everyone to get to know each other and do some icebreakers. They'll share the proposals for the articles in their, which are their editorials. And then they'll begin some field work by taking notes and observing, probably listening to some of the speeches, and meet together. This is just a sample. This is kind of, that's why I have it in a circle, because a lot of these things will be on repeat. They'll meet with each other to share information they've gathered. Again, that's why it's great to have a team, because they can be working and conducting interviews at the same time and getting different information, which they can then share together, and then work on a writing process, which includes help from the editorial staff, who are the bureau members, who will revise and review and make sure the articles are moving in the right, just like any editorial staff would do in any other news agency. And then it would keep going. So as long as there's time in that committee session, and once they really have all the material they want, then they'll really focus on perfecting and reviewing and editing their article so that it's complete and can be published on the MMUN website. We're also working on including little blog statements that could be posted on we'll have a microsite for the online conferences, and we're hoping to post allow them to post little bits of information from the committee sessions. So there's kind of a ongoing information sharing that's happening during the actual conference by Press Corps. You've been to a conference, right, to watch how Press Corps worked a little?
Mm-hmm. So it's basically that the first day is introduction and getting to know each other, and then they get to go to the committees and observe how it works, and they have space to do their research, to interview or write or look at speeches or hear them, and then they're back working and taking notes in order to develop that first editorial for the day, and it repeats for the second day. I think that the icebreakers among them as a group, all the different outlets, is it's very enriching for them, because sometimes your other outlet, other media reporter is going to have information that might help you for your topic. So it's very important that integrating that team for one, and then working together with your fellow reporter for your group is another aspect that in the first part, in the morning part, when you go to your committee to observe, it's when you put your plan in action. Usually one asks the questions or the other one is taking notes, or that working together it joins, it unites in that part.
Yeah, and we're adding some differences this year also to support Press Corps a bit more. We're going to be speaking to all the delegates about Press Corps and taking down countries who wish to be interviewed, so that there'll already be a list ready for when the Press Corps actually comes in, and Bureau members will be prepped to know, just immediately put them in a room with the Press Corps people, and so that they can already have been thinking about being interviewed about the topic and what they want to share. And therefore, hopefully we can support Press Corps a little more during the conference. In the writing process, it really is a joint effort. As I said, the editors, the Bureau will review and edit the articles with the reporters. The edited and completed articles will be posted on the website and the resources page. It's a continuous process through the committee, through that first topic, and it probably has stops and starts. It has more interviews, less interviews, and there may be suggestions from the Bureau on what to look for next or what's missing. And so there is support there, but it is the work of the students working on it. Yeah, did you have any takeaway from the articles that were finished at Press Corps last time?
Yeah, I think it's important for them to have order of importance in the topic set, starting with the most important message or idea, starting with that, and then working down to the simple one, just to be able to write as a editorial would be written, answering all the questions that usually as a reader you would like to see: who, what, when, where, why, and most importantly, remembering that that it's a story about people, for people, for your society. So you have to make sure that the language used is simple, it's easy to read, and I'll taking all this into consideration. Not that you can't. It's wonderful to teach them that you don't have to write very elaborate. The editorial should be readable to connect with the people, that don't forget who you're writing for. Basically, they should be good writers, but I think they also should be good listeners. That's the main thing about writing this editorial.
So, yeah, we have just a last few slides just to talk a little bit about the benefits. I think press corps is very important, especially in this era of quote unquote fake news. And a kind of, I think, there's a kind of culture of doubt, let's say, that has taken us over, where everything is kind of suspect. And it's important for, I think, students to learn how to think critically about media and about journalism. And, you know, we also live in an age of social media being one of our biggest sources of news, which is kind of unfortunate, as it's usually an echo chamber, and also not a place for deep thought. Often, I would say it doesn't generate a climate of deep thought. It generates a climate of one-liners and tweets and half informations to prove a point, as opposed to what Natalia was talking about, to inform. It seems that there's a lack of to inform going on often in that context. There are still plenty of great news agencies. But I think this is a key moment in time when there's so much misinformation out there, to really understand the value of good reporting, and why journalists are so necessary for democracy and you know, for healthy societies, I would say. Natalia, do you want to, going on and on about that?
I completely agree. I think that it's very important for everybody to research a lot of the information or the type of information you receive. It's easier to get a line or a meme or just a little quick video on TikTok, and you think you're informed, but you're just listening to 1% of it, or an opinion. So in order to be able to differentiate opinions from information, you have to dig a little bit deeper. I think that the youth right now is actually very interested in being informed, and it's finding power on information, based on information and knowledge. But it's not really accessible to them in a way that it's the research, or they have to look for it, while the other simple one comes to them. So start your day off with a news briefing, or listen to the news with your students, ask their opinions, get them involved in day-to-day things, ask constantly for what they think about what's happening in the world, because that is the way that you start thinking on informing yourself a little bit more deeper. When you have an opinion of certain thing, you need to be a little bit more informed. The press corps gives the balance for the model UN. It gets the delegates, it should get them informed of what their other delegations are going to present. It should get the people looking at the event informed of what's happening. It's a vital part of the process. Just as news is for us in a pandemic or in a hurricane, It's a vital part, whether is bias or not. You need both sides in order to create your own perspective and your own opinion.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is just, we've already gone through this basically. I think that even just making press corps as a choice shows students that you believe in the importance of press and that it deserves respect and attention. Because I think often it has had the place in MUN of being kind of unknown, and therefore a little bit, there's also been some fear around choosing it because it means, maybe I have to do something totally different that I don't understand, which isn't true, which I hope this has shown, is that really you have all the tools you need to do this. You don't have to be a journalist in order to share this with your students. And in choosing it, you are showing them, just by the action of making this choice, that press is important and should be researched and deserves value, along with other aspects, such as simulating an ambassador. That not only ambassadors make the world go round, let's say. The difference is really, it's there. It's definitely a difference, especially in the focus about committee session. But in terms of the research, that you can just do right alongside. If you have students studying countries, you can do right alongside with them, because that process is really really the same. It's really the same process actually, with just a slightly different focus being on a news agency rather than a country. And instead of thinking about solutions, as Natalia was saying, you're thinking about how to inform from the perspective of your news agencies. And then just finally on these slides is just the benefits. It's really, there's of course the language skills practice and the writing, but it's beyond that. There's thinking critically is perhaps the most important skill that you can gain from education, I would say. Lots of things to be gained, but critical thinking and understanding how to uncover truths is something we all need for global citizenship and for active members of our society. So someone with this experience, whether or not they become a journalist is irrelevant. They will understand much more about how media works, what reporting is about, and a lot more about how the world communicates. I don't know, Natalia, do you have anything to add about that?
I agree with you. You don't have to be a reporter in order to guide the students for this. It's helping them find the voice, asking questions. All questions are good. I think that the question that you don't ask is the one that's the wrong one. You need to ask everything. If you don't know it, that's the way you get information. That's the way you create a position, or you know what you like and what you want, basically. So it empowers the kids to be able to ask. And I think that when you have that, when you're able to ask questions, it gives you power. So the process is the same. The outcome is it's the same. You help them be critical thinkers, analyzing a little bit more the topics and their place in society, and it's just a marvelous experience. And I absolutely think that the Press Corps is a fundamental part of the whole Model UN process.
Right. So we have some time left, and for questions. But if there are any questions anybody would like to ask, we're here. You can also always email me at gabriel@montessori-mun.org or info@montessori. If you just write that question, info will get to me and I can answer. But we're very excited about very excited about Press Corps, and Natalia's been a big help in helping our Press Corps get even better. So I'm really grateful for her to be on this call and to have supported us in many ways. I want to thank her and thank you for your attention. But please don't be afraid of this topic. It's of this committee. It's really a wonderful addition and deserves a prime spot. So give it a try. Bring some reporters with you online. And a last word just about, maybe I should just mention about online, that I'm getting a question here, but let me just say this about online is online will still be highly functional. It's going to work basically the same as the in-person was for the Press Corps. They'll meet in their own committee, and then they'll have all the links that the Bureau will give so that they can join other committees and be given breakout rooms to interview the ambassadors. So all that will still function just the same, and be able to also work together in breakout rooms and in small groups of their reporters, 2 reporters from the same news agencies, even if they're in different places. So it's not going to be difficult for the online. It's really actually going to be, I think, in some ways even easier to make it work because the breakout rooms won't have any noise when they're interviewing students. So it'll be a more intimate way for them to discuss the topics. I'm getting asked, would it be fine to have a B1 level in English for non-native English speakers? You know, I think that in terms of levels, I'm going to let you know, if you feel like the students are prepared to write and read and create articles in English, then I think that's okay. I mean, but I think it really, a lot of it depends on also the student's desire and interest. If they are, if their level is strong enough for them to read and write at a 7th grade level, even if they're struggling a bit at that level, as long as they have that interest and they really want to participate and work through, then I think it could be fine. That's what I would say. Natalia, do you want to add something or?
Well, I think if they're working in a group, to make sure that the group is balanced, if one has struggling more with the language, is not a native English speaker or something, the other one is, so they could work together as a group. It could actually make a stronger group as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, but we often suggest that in all cases that, you know, if you have a weaker English speaker, that you pair them with someone who's stronger in English. Mm-hmm. It just helps, and again, it can bring balance. Definitely don't want to be exclusive. It's about being inclusive. So, you know, I would always leave the teacher to decide if they think that they're ready. It's about an individual ultimately, not just a level. Okay, then I think if there are no more questions, then please feel free again to write info and sign up. Again, thanks everyone for attending, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.